Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, allow me to welcome you and congratulate you on taking up the chairmanship of the Conference on Disarmament. You can fully count on the support of the Russian delegation. We are grateful to you for your attention to the issue of preventing an arms race in outer space. This topic is one of the central items on the agenda of the conference and a priority for the Russian Federation. Against the backdrop of the general deterioration of the international political situation, the situation in the field of military space security continues to worsen as well. The risks of outer space becoming an arena of armed confrontation are no longer hypothetical. Certain Western countries and blocs, in their space policy documents, explicitly refer to near-Earth space as another operational environment where military operations may be conducted. Some of them, guided by the goal of global dominance, have already begun implementing large-scale programs to develop weapons systems intended for use in space, from space or against space. For example, the U.S. project to create a national missile defense system, Golden Dome, envisages the development and deployment of space-based interceptors, the deployment in space of systems for tracking ballistic missiles and hypersonic weapons, as well as means capable of countering missile attacks before launch and during the boost phase. In fact, this amounts to creating a powerful force potential in near-Earth orbits which, despite the declared defensive nature of the program, includes offensive strike capabilities. The increasingly active use of satellite systems and corresponding ground infrastructure, declared to be for civilian purposes, to provide and support military operations and interfere in the internal affairs of sovereign states, is becoming a serious threat to the security of space activities. Such developments could lead to further destabilization of the international situation and the creation of new dividing lines, provoke other states to take compensatory measures, and ultimately risk unleashing an arms race, this time in outer space. Its consequences would be destructive for all of humanity. We consider it a priority task of the international community to prevent such a scenario. We are convinced that the point of no return has not yet been reached, and that, through the joint efforts of all states, it is possible to develop solutions that would prevent an arms race in outer space and preserve space as an area for peaceful cooperation. Mr. Chairman, the Russian Federation is convinced that the most effective way to achieve the goal of preventing an arms race in outer space is to develop and conclude a multilateral, legally binding instrument providing for a ban on the placement of weapons in outer space, as well as the use or threat of use of force against space objects or with their assistance. I would emphasize that non-binding measures can also play an important role, but only as an additional means. In other words, they cannot replace efforts toward a legally binding instrument. Among the fundamental legal obligations that, in our view, should be adopted by states, we consider the following to be priorities. First, to prohibit the use of missile defense systems as anti-satellite means to destroy targets on the ground or in the airspace, and to eliminate existing such systems. Furthermore, not to develop, test, deploy, or use weapons specifically designed for missile defense, as anti-satellite means to destroy targets on the ground or in the airspace, and to eliminate existing such systems, not to destroy, damage, disrupt the normal functioning of, or alter the flight trajectories of space objects belonging to other states without their consent. This list of potential elements of a future legally binding instrument on preventing an arms race in outer space is neither exhaustive nor final. Specific formulations and the set of obligations should be the result of a negotiating process that is long overdue. The adoption by states of corresponding obligations could prevent an uncontrolled arms race in outer space. This would significantly strengthen international security and stability, ensure predictability of space activities, increase trust between countries, and create conditions for productive cooperation in the exploration and peaceful use of outer space. We consider the Conference on Disarmament as the single multilateral forum for negotiations on arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation to be the platform where a legally binding instrument on preventing an arms race in outer space should be developed. We advocate the earliest possible search for solutions that would allow us to overcome the long-standing deadlock in the work of the conference, agree on a comprehensive and balanced program of work for the forum in accordance with its mandate, and begin substantive discussions on developing a legally binding instrument on preventing an arms race in outer space, launching corresponding negotiating efforts. We will not have to start from scratch, since there is already substantial groundwork that provides a good basis for a future legal instrument. This refers to the draft treaty on the prevention of the placement of weapons in outer space, the threat or use of force against space objects submitted by Russia and China to the Conference on Disarmament in 2008 and updated in 2014 to take into account the views of member states, as well as the provisions adopted by consensus in the 2024 final report of the group of governmental experts. We also note the work being carried out within the framework of the Open-Ended Working Group on Preventing an Arms Race in Outer Space, in which the Russian delegation is taking an active and substantive part. We expect that the work produced by the Open-Ended Working Group will be useful for future negotiations at the Conference on Disarmament. Mr. Chairman, I would separately like to draw attention to the international initiative and political commitment not to place weapons in outer space first. It is unprecedented in its significance as a measure of transparency and confidence building, and is a practical instrument for keeping outer space free from weapons of any kind. Like other non-binding measures, this initiative is not a substitute for a legally binding instrument, but a step toward its development. Its participants already number 37 states. If all countries, especially space powers, join it, the situation in outer space will become more predictable, and there will be justified confidence that this sphere will remain free of strike systems. We call on all states to join the UN initiative on preventing an arms race in outer space. Now, a few words regarding the concept of responsible behavior in outer space being promoted by a number of countries. In our view, it has a number of fundamental contradictions and shortcomings. Norms and rules of responsible behavior are not a generally accepted category of international law. They are subjective. There is no clear definition of who, and on the basis of what criteria, will determine whether the behavior of participants in space activities is responsible or not. Under such conditions, implementation of this concept cannot contribute to solving the task of preventing an arms race in outer space, but will only lead to an aggravation of tensions in space. This idea is intended to divert the attention of states and UN members from the goals of preventing an arms race in outer space towards secondary and non-core issues, and to establish rules governing space activities that benefit one group of countries at the expense of the interests of other states. Mr. Chairman, taking this opportunity, I would also like to inform you that the Russian Federation intends to submit to the First Committee of the 81st Session of the UN General Assembly draft resolutions directly related to the task of preventing an arms race in outer space. These concern further practical measures to prevent an arms race in outer space, measures to ensure transparency and build confidence in space activities, and the non-placement of weapons in outer space first. We count on the broadest possible support for our draft resolutions. Mr. Chairman, despite the difficult situation in the military space sphere and the obvious differences between states regarding how to achieve the goals of preventing an arms race in outer space, Russia is convinced that through joint efforts we can prevent negative and destructive scenarios. To achieve results, all participants in the process need to adopt a professional approach, discard confrontational thinking, and respect the legitimate security interests of other countries. I am confident that it is within our power to prevent the weaponization of outer space and a turbulent arms race in space that would affect the entire world. Thank you for your attention.